The iron latch on the front gate snapped shut with a hollow clang that echoed across the frozen lot. 16-year-old Cole Harper stood beside his little sister Mia, watching a man in a gray coat tack a legal notice onto the peeling door of the house they had grown up in. The paper fluttered in the wind like something already trying to escape. Cole didn't read the notice. He didn't need to. He already knew what it said. Foreclosure, vacate by sundown. The house was small and tired, its paint blistered from too many summers, and its windows clouded with years of dust. Their father had fixed the porch boards with scrap lumber after his accident. Their mother had planted marigolds along the steps because she said yellow made sadness less heavy. Now the marigolds were dead, their brittle heads poking through thin snow. Mia clutched the strap of her backpack with both hands. Inside it were the last things that still felt like home. Their mother's scarf, a paperback storybook, and a cracked snow globe their dad had once bought at a gas station because it had a tiny deer inside it. "Cole," she whispered, her voice thin and scared. "Where are we going?" Cole swallowed. His throat felt tight, like he'd swallowed cold air, and it froze inside him. "I don't know yet," he said, trying to sound steady, "but we'll figure it out." He had said that a lot lately. Ever since the hospital, ever since the funeral, ever since the bills started arriving with red stamps on the envelopes. The man in the gray coat cleared his throat. "You kids have until sunset," he said, not unkindly but not kindly either. "Anything you take has to fit in your hands." That was all. No long speech, no apology, no explanation. Just a deadline. They went inside. The house smelled like cold wood and old coffee. The living room was empty except for the couch with the broken leg and the coffee table their father had built from a shipping pallet. A faint outline remained on the wall where a family photo used to hang. Cole walked room to room, choosing what to save the way someone chooses what to rescue from a fire. A blanket, a flashlight with weak batteries, their mother's Bible, 2 cans of soup from the cupboard. Mia went into their parents' bedroom and came out with a framed photo of all 4 of them at the county fair. Her hair was in crooked braids, their father's arm around their mother's shoulders, cotton candy stuck to her cheek. "We can't take everything," Cole said gently. "I know," Mia whispered. "Just this." By late afternoon, the wind had sharpened into something mean. The sky hung low and gray, like it was pressing down on the town. Cole slung the blanket over his shoulder and picked up the toolbox his father used to keep under the sink. It was heavier than he expected. They stepped out of the house and shut the door behind them. The sound was soft, final. No one came out to wave, no neighbor spoke. The world just kept going. They walked toward the edge of town, where the old feedlot sat abandoned behind a line of leafless cottonwood trees. Their father used to work there years ago before the mill closed. The long barn still stood, crooked but solid, with a roof that sagged like a tired back. Snow crunched under their shoes. Mia stumbled once, and Cole caught her by the arm. "Sorry," she said. "You're fine," he told her. "You're doing great." The barn door was half off its hinge. Cole shoved it open with his shoulder. Inside, the air smelled like dust, dry grass, and time. Old hay bales were stacked against one wall, some collapsed into loose piles. Light filtered in through cracks in the boards, drawing thin silver lines across the dirt floor. It was quiet, not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that made your chest feel too big. "This is where Dad used to stack feed," Mia said softly. Cole nodded. He remembered helping once, his hands itching from straw, his father laughing when he sneezed. They set their things down in the far corner. The barn blocked some of the wind, but cold still crept in through the gaps. Cole wrapped the blanket around Mia and sat beside her, his back against the wall. The temperature dropped fast as the sun sank. Mia's teeth chattered. Cole pulled her closer. "I don't want to sleep," she said. "What if we don't wake up?" Cole closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. "We will," he said. "I promise." But inside, fear curled tight in his stomach. He wasn't supposed to be the one with answers. He was supposed to be worrying about school, about football tryouts, about whether the girl in math class liked him back. Instead, he was worrying about whether his sister would freeze. The wind moaned through the boards like something alive. Cole stood and paced, rubbing his arms, trying to think. Their dad had always said, "Cold doesn't kill you. Exposure does." Shelter mattered. Walls mattered. Cole looked at the hay. Not the loose piles, the stacked bales, rectangular, dense, dry. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Straw holds heat better than thin wood. It traps air." Cole crouched and pressed his hand into a bale. It was firm but forgiving, like a stiff pillow. Mia, he said slowly, what if we build something? She blinked at him. Build what? A room, he said, inside the barn. With hay? Yeah, he said. Just a small one, like a fort. Walls to block the wind. She looked at him like he'd suggested building a castle out of clouds. Then she looked at the hay again. Will it work? She asked. I don't know, he admitted, but doing nothing won't. That was the moment everything shifted. They dragged bales into the far corner, stacking them like giant bricks. Cole remembered watching his dad lay bricks once, how he staggered them so the seams didn't line up. Like Legos, Mia said, helping push one into place. Yeah, Cole said, like Legos that weigh as much as a person. They worked until their arms burned, until their fingers went numb, until their breath puffed in white clouds. 3 walls, then a fourth. A small square took shape inside the vast empty barn. Cole hung the blanket over the opening as a door. Mia crawled inside first. It's warmer, she said, surprised. Cole crawled in too. The wind's howl dulled. The cold felt distant. They lay down on the dirt floor, wrapped in coats and hay-scented air. For the first time since the notice on the door, Mia slept. Cole stayed awake. He listened to the barn creak. He listened to the wind rage outside their thin walls. He stared at the dark ceiling and felt something new rise inside him. Not hope yet, but determination. Sharp, focused, heavy. They had lost their parents. They had lost their house. But they were still here. And as long as they were still here, he would not let the cold take her too. Outside, the first snow of the coming storm began to fall, tapping softly against the barn roof like a warning. Morning didn't arrive gently. It crept in through the cracks of the barn walls, thin and gray, carrying a cold that felt sharper than the night before. Cole woke with stiff fingers and a dull ache in his shoulders. For a second, he didn't remember where he was. Then he saw the hay wall inches from his face and felt Mia's small weight pressed against his side. She was still asleep, her breath shallow but steady. Cole shifted carefully so he wouldn't wake her. The blanket door sagged where the wind had pushed against it all night. Frost had formed along the inside boards of the barn, a delicate white lace that looked pretty and cruel at the same time. Outside their hay shelter, the barn felt like a freezer. Inside, it was only slightly better, but that slight difference had kept them alive. Cole pulled on his boots and stepped out into the open space. His breath turned into fog. Snow had drifted in through the broken roof slats, dusting the dirt floor like powdered sugar. He rubbed his arms and looked back at the little square they'd built. It wasn't much, but it was something. He thought about the promise he'd made the night before. We'll figure it out. Now he had to mean it. Mia stirred when he came back inside. Is it morning? She murmured. Yeah, Cole said. Sort of. She sat up, wrapping the blanket around herself like a cape. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks pink from cold. She tried to smile, but it came out thin. I dreamed Mom was making pancakes, she said. With the burnt edges? Cole swallowed. She always burned them. Dad said that was the best part. Dad said a lot of weird things, Cole replied softly. They sat there for a moment, letting the quiet stretch between them. Then Mia asked the question Cole had been dreading. Are we staying here? Cole looked around the barn, at the sagging beams, at the stacks of hay, at the light sneaking through the walls. For now, he said, just until I figure out something better. She nodded, trusting him the way she always had. That trust felt heavier than the toolbox he'd carried the day before. Hunger arrived next. Their 2 cans of soup wouldn't last long. Cole knew that. He grabbed one and shook it. The liquid inside sloshed lazily. We'll save these, he said, for later. So what do we eat now? Mia asked. Cole thought. Then he grabbed his jacket. I'm going into town. She grabbed his sleeve. Don't leave me. I won't be long, he said. I promise. The walk felt longer in daylight. The town looked different now. Smaller, sharper, less forgiving. Smoke curled from chimneys. Cars passed, their drivers bundled and unaware of the 2 kids who had nowhere to go. Cole stopped at the diner first. A bell rang when he opened the door. Warm air hit his face, carrying the smell of coffee and grease. For a moment, he just stood there, stunned by the heat. The waitress frowned. You okay, kid? Yeah, he said. Do you need help? With anything? She studied him, his thin coat, his cracked boots. Dishwashing, she said finally. Back room, cash only. Cole didn't argue. He scrubbed plates until his hands went numb, until steam fogged his vision. When he finished, she handed him $5 in a paper bag. Leftover rolls, she said. Don't tell my boss. Cole thanked her like she'd given him gold. Next stop was the hardware store. He stared at the stoves lined up near the wall. All too expensive, all too big. Then he saw it. A small dented heater near the back, tagged with a handwritten sign, used $20. He didn't have $20. He swallowed and walked up to the counter. Sir, would you take 5 now and I work for the rest? The owner squinted at him. What kind of work? Anything, Cole said. Sweeping, carrying, fixing stuff. The man sighed. You got somewhere to put it? Cole thought of the barn, of the hay walls, of Mia's blue fingers. Yeah, he said, I do. The man scratched his beard. Come back tomorrow after school hours. We'll see. Cole nodded like his life depended on it. Because it did. When he returned to the barn, Mia was sitting cross-legged, sorting loose hay into a pile. I made it softer, she said proudly, for the floor. Cole held up the bag of rolls. Her eyes widened. Bread! Don't get too excited, he said. It's kind of stale. They ate slowly, tearing the rolls in half, savoring every bite. That afternoon, Cole reinforced the walls. He stacked another layer of hay, pushing the bales tight together. He remembered what his dad used to say about brick patterns and copied it as best he could. Mia cut strips from an old tarp they found and tied them over the cracks. Does this make it stronger? She asked. Yeah, he said, stronger and warmer. By nightfall, their little square had become a cube. When darkness came, it came hard. The wind picked up, whistling through the barn like a warning. Snow rattled the roof. The cold crept in like a living thing, testing every weak spot. Mia curled up beside him, her eyes wide. Cole? Yeah? What if the barn falls down? He didn't answer right away. He pulled her closer instead. It won't, he said. And even if it did, I'm right here. She clutched his sleeve. The night felt endless. Cole woke again and again to check the walls, to listen for cracks, to make sure Mia was breathing evenly. By morning, his head throbbed, and his legs felt like rubber. But the walls were still standing. So were they. That day, Cole went back to the hardware store. The owner handed him a broom. Start there. Cole swept. Then he stacked boxes. Then he hauled bags of feed until his arms burned. By the time the sun dipped low, the man nodded toward the heater. Take it. Cole dragged it on a borrowed dolly all the way back to the barn. Mia gasped when she saw it. Is that fire? Not yet, he said, but it will be. Installing it scared him more than anything so far. He cleared hay away from one corner and piled stones underneath. He cut a hole in the barn roof with shaking hands. What if it burns? Mia asked. Then we run, he said honestly, but we're doing it as safe as we can. When he lit the first match, both of them held their breath. The flame caught. Warmth bloomed. Not fast, not easy, but real. Mia stuck her hands out and laughed, a sound that felt like sunlight in the dark. It's like summer, she said. Cole leaned back against the hay wall and let himself breathe. For the first time since the gate had closed behind their house, the cold didn't feel like the enemy. It felt like something they could fight. Outside, the storm gathered strength. Inside their rough little shelter, 2 kids learned what survival really meant. Not just staying alive, but refusing to disappear. The heater changed everything. Not all at once, not magically, but in the way small, stubborn victories do. The first morning after they lit it, Cole woke to a sound he hadn't heard in days. Mia humming. She sat on their pile of hay blankets, holding her hands over the weak orange glow of the heater, her breath no longer fogging the air. It smells like metal and smoke, she said. That's the smell of not freezing, Cole replied. Outside their hay walls, the barn was still bitter cold. Frost clung to the boards like white scars. But inside their square of stacked hay, the air held on to the heat the way a coat holds a body. Cole checked the stones around the heater, just like he'd promised himself. No scorch marks, no smoke. The pipe still felt hot, but the mud he'd packed around it had dried into a hard shell. He exhaled. Today, he said, we make this better. Mia grinned. How? We make it ours. They started with the floor. The dirt was cold and uneven, so Cole dragged in 2 old pallets he'd found leaning against the barn wall. They laid them flat and spread loose hay over the top, then covered it with the tarp pieces they'd tied together the day before. It's like a mattress, Mia said, bouncing once. Don't test it too much, Cole warned, but he smiled. Next came the walls. The hay blocks were rough and itchy. Every time Mia brushed against them, she sneezed. Dad used to say you can seal cracks with mud, she said suddenly, like when the fence post leaned. Cole stared at her. You remember that? Yeah, he made me hold the bucket. Cole went to the frozen creek bed behind the barn and chipped up mud from the edge where it hadn't fully hardened. He mixed it with snow until it turned thick and dark, then smeared it into the gaps between the hay bales with a broken board. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The wind lost its voice. That afternoon, someone came. Cole heard footsteps crunching in the snow and froze. A man stood in the barn doorway, tall and bundled in a heavy coat. His beard was gray and his eyes sharp. "You kids living in here?" he called. Mia shrank back. Cole stepped forward. "Yes, sir." The man approached slowly, eyeing the heater pipe, the hay walls, the tarp door. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. "Name's Hank Rowley. Used to work this lot before it shut down." He leaned closer, pressing a hand against the wall. "It's warm." Cole nodded. "Well, we made it." Hank studied him for a long second. "You got parents?" Cole felt the question hit like a hammer. "No, sir." Hank's face softened. "You hungry?" Mia answered before Cole could. "Always." Hank laughed, a rough sound. "I'll be back." He returned an hour later with a bag of groceries and a dented pot. "I ain't rich," he said, setting it down. "But I don't walk past kids in winter." From that day on, others followed. A woman from the church brought a bundle of old coats. A school janitor dropped off a cracked lantern. A mechanic offered scrap wood. Not charity exactly, respect. People stopped calling it the barn. They called it the kids' place. Cole didn't like the attention, but he liked what it brought. Nails, rope, an extra pipe to extend the chimney. Mia decorated the inside with drawings on cardboard. A sun, a house with smoke rising, two stick figures holding hands. "This is us," she said. One night, after a hard day reinforcing the roof with boards, Cole sat against the hay wall, exhausted. Mia crawled over and leaned on him. "Do you think Mom would be mad?" "About what?" "About us living in a barn." Cole thought of their mother's tired smile. "She'd probably say it beats living outside." Mia nodded seriously. Then came the storm warning. They heard it first on the radio Hank loaned them. A crackling voice saying the temperature would drop below zero for 3 nights straight. That night, the wind arrived early. The barn groaned. Snow slammed the walls like thrown gravel. The heater fought back with a thin orange flame. Mia huddled close. "What if it goes out?" "Then we light it again," Cole said. "But what if we can't?" Cole tightened his jaw. "Then we don't stop trying." At midnight, the heater sputtered. Cole jumped up, heart pounding, and fed it the last piece of scrap wood. The flame steadied. They lay awake, listening to the storm chew on the world. By morning, snow was piled halfway up the barn door. They had survived. Not because they were lucky, because they had planned. That day, Cole decided they needed more than just warmth. They needed food. He went back to the diner and asked for more dish shifts. The waitress nodded without questions. By the end of the week, he had earned enough for a bag of rice and a jar of peanut butter. Mia learned to cook on the heater's flat top with a dented pot. Rice and water, soup and bread. "5-star restaurant," she said proudly. At night, Cole sketched ideas in a notebook he'd found in the trash. Thicker walls, a ceiling of hay, a better door. "This isn't just a shelter anymore," he told Mia. "It's a house." She beamed. "Our house." But not everything felt safe. One evening, a man in a black coat came by and frowned at the setup. "This ain't legal," he said. "You can't just live here." Cole stood his ground. "We're not hurting anyone." The man hesitated, then walked away. That fear lingered like cold. Still, they kept building. They added a second layer of hay to the walls. They sealed the ceiling. They hung the lantern from a beam. When Mia coughed from the dust, Cole plastered more mud. "See," he said, "civilized." One night, as snow whispered outside, Mia asked, "Do you think we're brave?" Cole stared at the heater flame. "I think we're stubborn." She smiled. "That's better." By the end of the week, their square of hay had turned into a room. Not big, not fancy, but steady. Warm enough that they took off their gloves. Quiet enough that Mia slept without shaking. The storm would come again, they knew that. But now they had walls that knew their names. And for the first time since the door of their real house had closed, Cole believed something dangerous and wonderful at the same time. They might actually make it through winter. By the second week, the shelter had a rhythm. The heater woke them before the light did. The lantern flickered on when the sky turned dark. Mia counted meals. Cole counted boards. They had learned how to live small and careful. But winter didn't care about careful. It came loud. The radio Hank loaned them crackled that afternoon. The announcer's voice strained and serious. "Severe winter storm warning. Wind chills expected to drop well below zero. Travel discouraged." Cole shut the radio off and stared at the hay walls. Mia felt it too. "Is it bad?" "It's going to be," he said, "which means we get ready." They worked until their hands went numb. Cole dragged more scrap boards from the barn's far end and nailed them over weak spots in the roof. He packed mud around the heater pipe again, sealing every gap he could see. He built a second layer of hay along the coldest wall, stacking the bales tight like puzzle pieces that only fit one way. Mia folded blankets and hung them over the doorway, one on the inside, one on the outside, turning the entrance into a thick curtain. "It looks like a cave," she said. "A warm cave," Cole replied. When night fell, the storm arrived like something alive. The barn groaned. The wind howled through the gaps in the boards. Snow hammered the roof and burst so loud it felt like fists. Mia crawled under the blankets beside him, her eyes wide. "It sounds angry," she whispered. Cole kept feeding the heater, small pieces of wood at a time so it wouldn't choke. The flame bent sideways when the wind pushed down the pipe, then straightened again. "Hey," he said quietly. "Remember when Dad said storms are just clouds arguing?" She gave a weak laugh. "He also said lightning was the sky's camera. See, science." The storm didn't slow. At midnight, a crack split the air. Not thunder, wood. The barn's outer wall shuddered. Cole jumped up, heart racing. He shoved his shoulder against the inside of the hay wall, bracing it while the wind pushed from the other side. Mia grabbed his coat. "Cole, I've got it," he said, though his arms burned. The heater sputtered. "No," he whispered. He dropped to his knees and fed it the last of their dry wood. The flame caught, then shrank. They waited, holding their breath. It steadied. Warmth spread again, slow but stubborn. They huddled together on the pallets. The blankets pulled tight around them. The lantern swayed on its hook. The wind screamed. Somewhere in the night, something crashed outside. Mia buried her face in his chest. "I don't want to die here." Cole swallowed hard. "We're not." "How do you know?" "Because this isn't the kind of story that ends like that," he said, even though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince, her or himself. Hours passed in pieces. Sleep came and went. Cold tried to creep in, but the walls pushed it back. When morning finally broke, it did so in silence. The wind had exhausted itself. Snow lay piled against the barn door, nearly as high as Cole's waist. Light filtered through the boards, pale and weak. They were still there. Mia sat up slowly. "We made it." Cole laughed once, a sound that surprised him. "Yeah, we did." They stepped outside and stared at what the storm had done. A corner of the barn's roof had caved in. One wall leaned like a tired man, but the hay shelter stood firm in its corner, unchanged. "That thing saved us," Mia said. Cole nodded. "It did." Word spread fast. By afternoon, Hank came trudging through the snow, shaking his head. "Whole north side of town lost power," he said. "You kids okay?" "We're here," Cole said. Hank studied the shelter, the thick walls, the heater pipe. "I'll be damned." 2 days later, a woman from the county office arrived. Her coat was clean, and her boots were new. "You can't stay here forever," she said, looking around. "We're not planning to," Cole answered. She frowned at the hay walls. "This is dangerous." "So is sleeping outside," Mia said quietly. The woman hesitated. "Look," Cole said, "we're not asking for anything. We're just surviving." The woman sighed. "I'll see what I can do." She left without promising anything. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. Fear pressed on him harder than the cold ever had. What if they make us leave? What if they take this too? He stared at the lantern light and felt something shift inside him. If they could build this from hay and scraps, they could build something else. In the days that followed, Cole worked harder than ever. He added a ceiling layer of hay, tying it to the walls with rope. He built a frame for the doorway out of scrap wood and hung an old door Hank found in a dump outside town. Mia stitched together feed sacks and stuffed them with loose hay to make real mattresses. "Luxury," she declared. People kept coming. A man brought a sack of potatoes. A teacher brought notebooks. A kid from school dropped off a football. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. One afternoon, as Cole hammered a board into place, Hank leaned against the barn post and watched him. "You know," Hank said, "folks been building houses out of straw and mud for a long time. You just remembered how." Cole wiped sweat from his face. "I didn't invent anything." "No," Hank said. "You used what you had." That night, as snow whispered against the walls, Mia asked, "Do you think Mom and Dad can see this?" Cole stared at the heater flame. "If they can, I think they're proud." She nodded, satisfied. Then the cold returned. Colder than before. The radio said -20. The heater burned low and steady. The walls held. Mia curled under the blankets and whispered, "It feels like a real house now." Cole looked around. The drawings on the wall, the shelf of cans, the door that shut out the wind. "Yeah," he said, "it does." But outside their small, warm square, the town moved on without them. School buses passed. Lights glowed in windows. People lived normal lives. And inside the barn, two kids balanced between being invisible and being noticed, between being safe and being found. Cole knew something had to change, because winter wasn't the only thing that could take their shelter away. And when it did, he needed to be ready. The storm had taught them how to survive the cold. Now the world was teaching them something harder. How to survive people. After the storm, everything felt different. Not safer exactly, just more visible. The barn still stood at the edge of town like it always had. But now people noticed it. Tire tracks appeared in the snow where there hadn't been any before. Footprints came and went. Someone had even nailed a loose board back onto the outer wall without saying a word. Cole didn't know how to feel about that. He liked the help. He hated the attention. Inside the hay house, life had found a routine. Mia woke first and fed the heater with careful hands. Cole checked the walls, pressed his palm against the mud-plastered seams, and listened for drafts. The shelter held its warmth the way a fist holds a coin, tight and protective. They had survived the worst storm in years. But survival had a strange side effect. People started talking. It began with a man from the hardware store who came by one afternoon and stood staring at the hay walls like he was studying a piece of art. "You built this?" he asked. Cole nodded. "With hay and mud and rope." The man laughed under his breath. "My granddad used to say straw was warmer than wood if you stacked it right." Mia peeked from behind the doorframe. "It keeps the wind out." The man crouched and knocked gently on the wall. "Feels solid." The next day, two teenagers from Cole's old school showed up. They didn't mock him. They didn't laugh. They just stood there quiet. "Is it really warm?" one asked. Cole opened the door wider. Heat spilled out like breath. They stared. That was when Cole understood something new. This wasn't just a hiding place anymore. It was proof. Proof that they hadn't vanished. Proof that they hadn't given up. And proof traveled fast. A woman from the county came again. Same clean coat, same worried eyes. "This isn't sustainable," she said, standing just inside the barn door. "You can't raise a child like this." Mia stiffened. Cole kept his voice calm. "We're not raising her. We're surviving." The woman hesitated. "There are shelters. Shelters separate families," Cole said quietly. "We don't have anyone else." Silence hung between them. The woman sighed. "I'll talk to my supervisor." She left without a promise. That night, Cole didn't sleep. The fear wasn't of the cold anymore. It was of being split in half. The next morning, Hank brought news. "County's asking questions," he said. "Not bad ones, just questions." Cole nodded. "That's what scares me." Hank leaned against the barn wall. "You ever think about what comes after winter?" Cole shook his head. "I think about tomorrow." "Fair," Hank said. "But you got something here, kid. People see it." Mia sat beside Cole later and traced the dirt with her finger. "Do you think they'll make us leave?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Would we lose the house again?" Cole closed his eyes. "We might." Her face crumpled, just a little. "I don't want to start over again." He pulled her close. "We won't, not the same way." The next days felt heavy. Cole worked more hours at the diner. His hands smelled like soap and grease. The waitress slipped him extra rolls without comment. The hardware store owner gave him broken boards instead of throwing them away. Mia spent her time sewing feed sacks together, turning them into thicker blankets. She drew more pictures. One showed the hay house with a heart over it. On the fourth day after the storm, a man in a dark coat arrived with a clipboard. "I'm from Child Services," he said gently. Mia froze. Cole stepped forward. "We're okay." The man looked at the shelter, the heater, the food shelf. "You built this?" "Yes." "For your sister?" "Yes." The man crouched to Mia's level. "You warm in there?" She nodded. "And safe." The man stood and wrote something down. "I'm not here to take anyone today," he said. "I'm here to understand." Cole didn't trust that word. But the man didn't force his way in. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked. When he left, the barn felt colder, even with the heater burning. Mia whispered, "What if they make me go somewhere else?" Cole held her hands. "They won't. Not without me." "But what if they try?" Cole's jaw tightened. "Then we show them what we've built." That night, he wrote in the notebook again. Not plans for walls this time. Plans for proof. He sketched the layers of hay, the stone base under the heater, the mud seal around the pipe. He wrote numbers, how much wood they used per day, how warm it stayed inside. If the world wanted reasons, he would give them facts. 2 days later, the man returned, this time with the county woman and another official. They stood inside the barn, steam rising from their breath. "It's organized," the woman admitted. "It's safe," Cole said. "We made sure." The official ran a hand over the wall. Hay bales, 3 feet thick. They trap air, Cole said. Air traps heat. The man from child services looked at Mia. Do you go to school? She hesitated. Not right now. Cole spoke up. She will, when it's safe to leave here during the day. The man nodded slowly. You're acting like an adult. Cole felt something twist in his chest. I didn't choose to. Silence again. Finally, the woman said, we're not shutting this down today. Mia's shoulders dropped in relief. But this isn't permanent, she added. Cole nodded. Neither is winter. That night, snow fell quietly, like it didn't want to disturb them. Mia lay on her hay mattress and stared at the ceiling. Do you think people like us? Cole thought about the bread, the coats, the boards. I think they're surprised, and he said. And sometimes surprise turns into kindness. She smiled sleepily. I like that better than being invisible. Cole stared at the lantern light. He didn't want to be a symbol. He didn't want to be a story. He just wanted to be a brother. But the world had started watching. And when the world watches, it doesn't look away easily. Winter was still there, pressing against the walls, whispering through the cracks. But now there was another pressure. Hope, heavy and fragile at the same time. And Cole knew that what they built next wouldn't just decide if they stayed warm, it would decide if they stayed together. The cold didn't leave right away. It lingered like an uninvited guest, refusing to take the hint. The snow around the barn hardened into gray ridges, and the wind kept testing the walls as if it still believed it could win. Inside the hay house, the heater burned low and steady, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and dry grass. Cole woke before Mia, as he usually did now. His first habit was to check the heater. His second was to run his hand along the wall. Warm, solid, still theirs. But his thoughts weren't on the weather anymore. They were on people. The man from child services came back 2 days after the inspection. This time, he brought a folder instead of a clipboard. He didn't look unfriendly, but he didn't look easy either. My name's Daniel Brooks, he said, crouching just inside the barn door. I wanted to talk. Mia sat stiffly on her mattress, her hands folded in her lap. Cole stayed standing. About what? Cole asked. About options, Daniel said. For both of you. Cole felt his chest tighten. We already have one. Daniel glanced at the hay walls. I can see that. They sat on overturned crates near the doorway. The heater clicked softly between them. There are families who foster, Daniel said. Places with real rooms, beds, schools close by. Mia's fingers twisted together. Cole shook his head. They won't take both of us. Daniel didn't argue. Not always. So that's not an option, Cole said. Daniel studied him for a long moment. You built this yourself? Yes, for your sister? Yes. Why not go to a shelter? Cole answered without thinking. Because they split you up by age. Daniel nodded slowly. You've thought about this. I have to. Silence fell again, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Daniel said, I'm not here to tear this down. I'm here to make sure you don't get hurt doing what you're doing. Cole wanted to believe him. He wasn't sure he did. After Daniel left, Mia whispered, He didn't look mean. No, Cole said, just official. That night, the heater almost went out. They had been rationing wood, trying to stretch it. But the temperature dropped faster than Cole expected. The flame shrank to a dull red eye, and the room cooled. Mia's teeth started to chatter. Cole fed in their last piece of scrap wood. The flame flared, then settled. They stared at it like it was a living thing. That was the last one, Mia said. I know. The next morning, Cole went back into town earlier than usual. He knocked on doors, asked for odd jobs, hauled snow, fixed a loose gate, cleaned out a shed. By sunset, he had enough for a small bundle of firewood and a bag of dried beans. He dragged both back to the barn, his arms burning. Mia met him at the door. You look tired. I am, he said, but we're good for another week. They cooked beans in the dented pot and ate slowly, wrapped in blankets. I wish Mom could see this, Mia said. She'd say we're terrible cooks. Cole smiled faintly. She'd make us add salt and pretend it was better. Days passed in a strange half-life between crisis and calm. Cole started teaching Mia from the old notebooks the teacher had given them. Reading in the mornings, math in the afternoons. You're still in school, he told her. Just underground school. She laughed. Does that make you the teacher? I guess it does. They made a chalkboard out of a scrap of wood and a piece of charcoal. Mia wrote her name on it in big crooked letters and drew a star next to it. One afternoon, Daniel came back with another woman. She wore boots instead of heels and carried a thermos. This is Linda, he said. She's with a housing program. Linda crouched and ran her hand over the hay wall. 3 layers? 2 in a ceiling, Cole said. Mud between. It's clever, she said, but it's still temporary. Everything is, Cole replied. Linda smiled sadly. Not if we help you. They talked about possibilities. A small trailer, a converted shed, a place where Cole could still work and Mia could go back to school without hiding. None of it was certain, but it was the first time someone had spoken about a future instead of a problem. After they left, Mia sat on the mattress and stared at the wall. Would we take the house with us? She asked. Cole shook his head. I don't think it moves. She traced the mud line with her finger. I don't want to forget it. We won't, he said. It's in us now. The next storm came without warning. Not as loud as the first, but colder. The heater worked harder. The wood burned faster. Cole lay awake, counting breaths, counting minutes, counting the spaces between gusts of wind. At dawn, the barn roof groaned again. Not breaking, just warning. Cole braced the inside wall with a board. Mia handed him nails with shaking fingers. What if it falls this time, she asked. Then we get out, he said. But not until we have to. They stayed. The storm passed by noon, leaving the world white and silent. Their shelter still stood. But Cole felt the truth pressing in on him. Every storm made it weaker. Not the hay house. Them. He was thinner now. Mia coughed more in the mornings. The cold didn't bite like it used to, but it wore them down in quieter ways. That afternoon, Hank came with a sack of oranges. Vitamin C, he said, keeps you from falling apart. Mia peeled one and shared it between them. It tastes like summer, she said. Hank looked at Cole. You ever think about letting folks help more? Cole hesitated. They are helping. I mean, officially. Cole didn't answer. That night he wrote again in the notebook. Not plans for walls, not notes about heat. A list. What we need to stay together. A place where Mia can go to school. A way to work without leaving her alone all day. Somewhere warm that won't collapse. He stared at the list for a long time. The hay house had saved them. But it couldn't raise her. It couldn't teach her. It couldn't protect them from the world forever. Mia watched him write. Are we leaving? She asked quietly. Not yet, he said, but we're getting ready. For what? For something better. She nodded, trusting him again. That trust still felt heavy. The next visit from Daniel came with news. There's a place outside town, he said. An old caretaker's cabin. It needs work, but it's legal. And it can stay in your name until you're 18. Cole's heart kicked hard in his chest. And Mia, she can stay with you, Daniel said, with conditions. Mia squeezed Cole's hand. Nothing happens tomorrow, Daniel added. We'll take it slow. After he left, the barn felt smaller. The hay walls that had once seemed huge now felt close. Mia lay back on the mattress. Do you think the house will be sad when we go? Cole looked around. The drawings, the shelves, the doorway curtain. No, he said. I think it did its job. She smiled. Then we did too. That night, the heater glowed low and orange, and the wind whispered against the boards like it always had. But for the first time since winter began, Cole wasn't just listening for danger. He was listening for the end of something, and the beginning of something else. The cabin sat at the edge of a narrow dirt road, half hidden by leafless trees. Its roof sagged in the middle, and the porch leaned like it had grown tired of standing straight. A broken fence traced the yard in crooked lines, and the windows were clouded with dust. But it had four walls, it had a door, and most importantly, it had a future. Cole stood in front of it with his hands in his jacket pockets while Mia squeezed his arm. This is it? She asked. Daniel, the caseworker, nodded. It used to belong to the park caretaker. No one's lived here in years. It needs work, but it's yours to try. Mia stepped onto the porch and pushed the door open. It creaked like it was waking up from a long sleep. Cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of old wood and leaves. Inside, the cabin was bare. One small room, a rusted stove in the corner, a cracked sink, and a window that looked out over frozen grass. It's bigger than the hay house, Mia whispered. Cole didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the barn, about the walls they had built with their hands, about the way the heater had glowed in the dark like a second heart. It's different, he finally said, but it could work. They didn't move in that day. They went back to the barn. The hay house waited in its corner like it always had, quiet and steady. Mia sat on her mattress and looked around. I don't want to forget this place, Ramon, she said. We won't, Cole replied. This is where we learned how not to quit. They spent the next week going back and forth between the barn and the cabin. Hank brought tools. The hardware store owner donated a roll of wire. Linda from the housing program found an old mattress someone had thrown out. Cole fixed the stovepipe in the cabin. Mia washed the windows with melted snow. They patched holes with scrap boards and sealed gaps with mud, just like they had in the hay house. Same tricks, Mia said. New walls. The night before they moved, snow fell softly, like it didn't want to interrupt them. Cole sat inside the hay house, writing one last thing in his notebook. Not plans, not numbers. Just a sentence. This house kept us alive. Mia crawled under the blankets beside him. Are you scared? A little, he admitted. Me too. They listened to the heater tick and the wind brush the barn walls. In the morning, they carried what little they owned to the cabin. The blanket, the lantern, the notebook, Mia's drawings. Cole shut the barn door behind them. The hay house stayed where it was, quiet, empty, and strong. The first night in the cabin felt strange. The walls didn't smell like grass. The floor didn't crunch. The stove was louder. Mia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. It's too quiet, she said. Cole laughed softly. You'll get used to it. By the end of the week, Mia was back in school. Her backpack looked too big on her shoulders, but her smile was real. Cole walked her to the bus stop every morning, then went to work at the diner and the hardware store. At night, he fixed loose boards on the cabin or read with Mia by the stove. The cold didn't leave right away, but it didn't scare them anymore. One afternoon, Hank came by the cabin and leaned against the porch rail. You know, he said, people still talk about that hay house. Cole raised an eyebrow. In a good way? Hank smiled. In a surprised way. Mia came out with a piece of paper in her hand. It was a drawing of the barn with a little square inside it and two stick figures standing in front. I'm going to show this to my class, she said. I'm going to tell them how we built a house out of nothing. Hank nodded. That's a good story. Cole watched her and felt something loosen inside his chest. Spring came slowly. Snow melted into mud. The grass showed through in thin green lines. The barn roof sagged more, but the hay house still stood in its corner like it always had. One Saturday, Cole and Mia walked back there. The barn was quieter now. No heater ticking, no lantern glow. Mia touched the wall. It's cold again. It was never meant to last forever, Cole said. She thought about that. But it lasted long enough. They stood there for a moment, then turned back toward the road. That night, sitting in the cabin with the stove humming, Mia asked, "What do you think home is?" Cole didn't answer right away. He thought about their old house with the marigolds. He thought about the barn. He thought about the hay walls and the storm. I think home is where you don't give up, he said, and where you don't have to be alone. Mia nodded, satisfied. Weeks later, Daniel stopped by for one last check. You did good, yes, he told Cole. Both of you. Cole shrugged. We just used what we had. Daniel smiled. That's what most people forget to do. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Money was still tight. The cabin still leaked when it rained. Winter would come again. But now they had a place that belonged to them, and something stronger than walls. They had proof. Proof that even when the world took everything, they could build something back. Before bed one night, Mia taped her old drawing of the hay house to the cabin wall. So we remember how to, she said. Cole nodded. And that is how a house made of hay became more than a shelter. It became a lesson. That warmth doesn't always come from furnaces. That safety doesn't always come from money. And that sometimes the smallest walls can hold the biggest courage. Now let me ask you something. If you lost everything tomorrow, would you give up? Or would you build something new from what was left? What would you have done in Cole and Mia's place? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone. And if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional, true-to-life stories about survival, hope, and the strength of the human spirit. Because sometimes the strongest houses aren't built with bricks. They're built with courage.